Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, Mike, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the EntrePastors podcast, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, you and I got connected recently through a mutual friend, and at the moment, I'm not even remembering who that is, but doesn't matter. You and I got connected, and we had a great conversation that I thought, man, Mike's got some wisdom and inspiration to share with our community. So let's dive right into it. Why don't we start with just a little introduction to you? Tell us a little bit about who you are, the work that you do, and then we'll go from there.
Certainly. I'm Mike Henry Sr. I live in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, have a wife and two grown children, two children-in-law, and three grandchildren. And it's hard calling them grown children when they're in their 30s.
Right.
So it's they're grown adults, actually. But I spent most of my career working in the technology side of the world. The early years were in the freight business. I was always worked for somebody else. I wasn't successful at starting my own business or actually being employed, self-employed, or being the boss. And I became a Christian after I was in the workforce. And I struggled for most of my career trying to figure out how to integrate my faith into my work. And God gave me some ideas over the course of that time. And so just about 7 years ago, I started an online community called Follower of One. It's designed to help marketplace Christians integrate their faith and work. And it's an online community so that we can connect with one another and help each other doing this, because it's not very easy for a church staff or a pastor or somebody like that to be particular in how they help all the different occupations typically in the local church. And so we started that 7 years ago as a nonprofit. And right after we got certified as a nonprofit, I got kind of downsized out of my job and I started doing contract work. And now I'm working on this full time.
Very cool. And I want to go back to that time that you were a new Christian, excited about your faith. And then, I want to ask you about some of the roadblocks that you discovered as far as integrating your faith into your work life. But let me just give a little context before we go there and connect a few dots. One thing we say often here at EntrePastors is we're trying to help pastors have a mindset shift about ministry, because I think often we've been given this very narrowly defined, definition of what ministry is. And for pastors, that means you work vocationally for a church, and it's a church job, it's a staff job. Nothing wrong with that. But we at EntrePastors say that business is ministry, that helping a pastor understand, just because you need extra income and you're struggling to make ends meet on your pastoral salary, you going out into the marketplace as an entrepreneur or, working in some other capacity in the marketplace is not leaving ministry just to go make money. It's just ministry looking different in a different capacity. So I certainly think there's an overlap of your story with our audience and one of the major themes that we hit on. So take us back to those early days as you're now a new Christ follower, excited about your faith, but then starting to recognize this disconnect between what I hear in church on Sunday to what I am equipped to go do in the workplace on Monday.
Yeah. Okay. That's so at age 30 is about when all this happened. I was frustrated with life. I kind of had this worldview that you had to do good things to get into heaven, but I didn't want to do any more of them than I had to do. And so my goal was to be the third to last guy into heaven. I didn't want to be last or next to last, but I was aiming for about third to last. I didn't want to work any harder than I had to. But because I was checking out church, my wife was asking me to go to church. And I wasn't happy in my job. I was having trouble in my marriage. I decided to go check out church because my wife was asking, and also because I couldn't tell my boss no. And if it didn't work, I was going to just tell her no. And I happened to attend a workshop over the course of 3 or 4 months while I was checking things out, where I learned how to show someone else how they can know for a fact they're going to heaven using a pocket Bible. And the 4 verses in that gospel presentation ended with Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. And that just totally blew up my whole worldview.
Mm,
My whole strategy for how I was going to get to heaven is as a lost person working their way into it didn't work. And
mm,
so now I'm trying to figure out new things. And I'm searching the scriptures, and we'd had some missionaries who came and spoke at our church, and they talked about how they were called into ministry, and they sold their house and they moved to wherever. And I remember telling Jesus I wasn't real excited about moving overseas, but I was open to other options because I wasn't happy in my job either. I was having trouble with my marriage and my job. So Jesus, if you're going to fix my marriage, don't just leave me with a crappy job. What else can I do? And I was trying to get into ministry. Those were the words I wanted to use. I kept asking Jesus to put me into ministry. And it was months later when I really started kind of getting this idea from Jesus that basically equated to, okay, you're a minister, now get back to work. You know, uh, well, I do some research. I'm not a Greek scholar, but I see the same Greek word, and sometimes they translate it minister, and sometimes they translate it service.
mm.
And I actually even see where Jesus in Mark 10:45 says that he didn't come to be served, but to serve. And it's that same Greek word that's often translated minister.
Mm.
And then I heard a sermon one time where somebody was talking about how ministry is just serving other people so that they might see Jesus. And I started realizing that I was in the job I was in to serve Jesus there.
Yeah.
And wherever I am, I can serve Jesus. And now verses like Colossians 3:17 make a lot more sense. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus. You know, and so even the bad parts of that job became a little less bad because I knew that was my God-given assignment for that particular day.
Now,
If I'm not going to get a new job today, then what can I do?
did you end up getting a different job, or did the Lord keep you there in that mission field
I,
for a long
I
time?
actually I actually changed jobs a number of times.
Okay.
So the other thing I learned was is that my vision, typically my vision was always a little different than my employer's vision. Many people in business, their goal is to just make money, and I wanted to do something more than that. And so I changed jobs a number of times. Sometimes because it was my idea, sometimes because it was theirs.
Yeah.
And I actually even counted up that I've worked for um, 31 different people at 16 different companies in my career over the years that I was moving around and jumping jobs and doing those things. I was in 4 different industries. But then I see God using that as I started creating this online community for marketplace Christians because I had the same problem in all those different places. The circumstances don't change just because somebody else is signing your paycheck. You
Yeah.
have the same problem. You can't run from the world. We are it.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. You mentioned like seeing missionaries come through, and I've been called into ministry, and they're going off to their various mission fields. But
Mhm.
here you are stuck in a normal person job. And where was that disconnect where you felt like, man, I'm not really being equipped, or the church is not really helping me, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
figure out how to take this into the workplace? Like it's they live as though the workplace isn't even a thing, or they don't really focus on my workplace that much. Like, because when you and I were talking earlier, I really sensed that there was something there
Yes.
where you just felt like there was a disconnect, which is in part the work that you're doing now with your nonprofit Follower of One. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to just go back to that place in your story and tap into that frustration a little bit.
I get that. So when I would ask my pastors, what can I do? The answer was always because I was actually early in my career, was in the freight business. And so typically I worked in the industrial part of town, which was way on the other side of town from the suburb I lived in. But I went to church in the suburb because that's where I was hanging around on the weekends. Well, I would ask the question, okay, what can I do? And the answer was always come back out to church and take a class, or we're going to go do this. Or, one pastor asked me to go on a mission trip to another country. And that's actually the conversation that created some of the ideas that we have. When he was asking me to go on this he was actually asking me to go to Mexico on a mission trip. I couldn't go, but I said, he said that when people go on a mission trip, that's when they get it. And I said, I think I get it. And I drive 30 miles a day to work. How is that not a mission trip?
Mm.
And, and weren't on the same page, because we think that we have to create this model where we have to kind of come out of the work world to do something with our faith.
Mm.
We come out of our work world to go be with our Christian friends. We come out of it to go work at the kids event tonight or something. That my faith was asking me to do meant that I had to leave work. And that really irritated me. I even got early on, I got very kind of sharp when I heard the word full-time minister,
Tell me more.
because it meant that I was a part-timer.
I
I
would
mean,
say
the
more
simple
about
fact
that.
the simple fact that you have a full-time one must mean that I must not be that, because I'm not that. I'm not the full-timer. So what am I? Am I a part-time minister? Was I too late to get on the bus with all the full-time people? Now I started my career after I had a mortgage. I'm stuck to part-time ministry for the rest of my life.
Mike, had you seen it modeled anywhere that it was different? Like somebody that you knew, somebody that the Lord might have put in your life, you thought, I want to do that. That guy is more like me than that dude up on the stage behind the podium. And because that sometimes that's how the Lord kind of takes us from one place to the other.
Yeah, and I actually didn't see it. What was interesting was it was probably there. I'm pretty clueless. I joke with people that if you look up the phrase "often wrong but seldom in doubt," you'll see a picture of me. But I was pretty clueless. However, what happened was right after I became a Christian, or a few years after I became a Christian, the book Halftime came out. And much of the faith leadership became people who were in white collar positions. They had discretionary time in their daily job, and they could choose to put their faith into these holes in their daily job because they weren't directly reporting to somebody, or they were senior executives or something
And
like
that's a
that.
great book. That book changed my life. I read it when I was 40. So it was about halftime.
Well, I read it. I was about that age too, so we must be close. But when I read the book, my thought was, well, now this is great. Now all I have to do is go sell my cable company, and I can do all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Like Bob. Uh-huh.
And so it kept striking me that I still was kind of on the outside. And for the last 20 years, much of Faith at Work has been for people that have some discretionary capability in their schedule or their resource, their financial situation. And I really wanted to come up with something that worked, like for the over the road truck drivers that I was working with, or I went on to go into technology. But a computer programmer, they've got a deadline. They've got to get a software package done in time.
Yeah.
Got to get, there's certain deadlines to hit. And so they can't just take time off and go to a Bible study or things like that all the time.
I just
And
want to, oh, sorry, go ahead. Keep
go
going,
ahead.
Mike.
That's all right.
I want to pause for a minute and just make sure the pastors listening to this are really listening with two sets of ears, one for themselves, what this might mean for their own, ministries. But also, I want you to listen through the context of still being in that role of a pastor and leading a congregation, because I want to summarize what you're hearing. Just imagine that Mike is giving voice. What if Mike is speaking out on behalf of regular folks that are sitting by the thousands in churches across our nation today? And Pastor, they want you to hear this. They want you to hear that I want my life to count for the Lord. I want my life to serve others and serve the kingdom. And the church, the only thing I ever get from the church is how I can do that inside the four walls of this building or under the umbrella of what our church is doing. And there's nothing wrong with the church sending a team of people to Mexico or on a missions trip somewhere else in the world. There's nothing wrong with providing a nursery or a small group or a Bible study. it's not that those things are wrong, but when we present this dichotomy that this is the arena where ministry happens, and if it's kind of outside of the domain of our little local church, it's not ministry. I want our pastors to hear that. What if we're sending that signal that the rest of you, you're not really in ministry? Hey, pastor, maybe there's a reason that you're tired and burned out, because we've created a model that causes everyone else to think I'm not in ministry. The pastor is. So I'll sit back and kind of watch him do his ministry, because he's not affirming the very valid ministry that I have full time every single day when I get up and go to work. So I'm just kind of recapping what you said, Mike, but I want that to sink in, because I don't think this is a conversation that's happening enough in church circles, and hopefully we can change that.
Yeah. The first one of the first people I met that was a Christian that I didn't go to church with in the workspace was our FedEx guy. I found out that he was praying for one of my coworkers. I don't even think I was praying for the guy, but the FedEx guy's praying for this guy that he doesn't work with. He just delivers packages to. And the FedEx guy and I started sharing prayer requests, and that was very key for me. It was actually after 9/11 when I re-engaged all this again, and God reminded me, well, you might not be able to do anything else today, but if you go to work and pray for people, that's good for today. That's what I have for you to do today. And I started mentally walking through the office and praying for the people's cubes I would walk past while I was driving to work in rush hour. And God started making things happen. And that became the ministry that started out for me, was just praying for people and paying attention to the people that I worked with. And everything changed after that, because now I'm doing something that's very important. No one else in my church is in a position to do that. I'm the only guy from my church that works there. So, good. That's now I've got a calling. I've got something I'm supposed to go do today.
Yeah.
And we came up with 5 things really that I use, that we talk about in Follower of One, prayer being the first one, appreciating others is the second one, knowing what we believe is the third, fourth is serving others, and the fifth is speaking for ourselves. And we talk to people on almost everything that we do. We talk about those 5 daily habits. We define ministry as helping other people move one notch closer to Jesus. And using those 5 mechanisms and the intention of helping other people move closer to Jesus, I became a full-time minister the day I realized all that.
That's
and
powerful.
Now I'm capable of doing whatever I need to do, or I start finding it out. It's me and the Holy Spirit solving for what Mike's ministry looks like. And it's totally different than me waiting for my church to ask me to do something. I've got something I've got to do every day.
That's good. Mike, unpack this concept that you and I were talking about, because this is so good. I'm excited for you to share this, of what you call a marketplace missions trip. Let's talk about that.
Well, like I said, I had that conversation with the pastor, and I used to complain about that story to people. And I told a young millennial friend that story one day, about 6 or 8 months after I started Follower of One. And he said, why don't you do a virtual mission trip? And I was just struck by that idea. And what we've done is we call it a marketplace mission trip. It's a 2-week-long challenge using devotionals. We do it together like we're on a regular mission trip. So we have a cohort of people, and we try and go very intentionally to our own job every day, just like we were going on an overseas mission trip. What will we do? What would our work look like if the guy in the cube next to us came to our city from another country on mission? He would be doing the same job I'm doing, but he's trying to build relationships with people so that he can share with them about the gospel. And so we came up with 10 devotionals. We do 5 days the first week where we teach people about those 5 daily habits. That's our kind of training week. And then the next week, we have 5 very action-oriented devotionals about going and putting those ideas to practice in your work. And especially on the second week, and a couple of times in and around the weeks, we have Zoom calls where we challenge people. We get together just like we would debrief on a mission trip. We get together and talk about what happened today and pray for one another.
Mm.
And we've now done 45 of these. Over 1,000 people have done them. And
Wow.
what we found out is that my pastor was right. When people do go on a mission trip, that's when they get it. We get excited. The more intentional we are with our faith, the more likely we are to see Jesus working, and we get excited about it. And we've also started now co-branding these with churches and helping churches do these mission trips with their people. So it's their community of people doing it together. They do it in our platform, but it helps members of the church connect, even though they have different kinds of jobs, and they get to know each other better, and they practice living this out over a 2-week period, and it transforms people's lives. It blows me away because it was just my crazy idea, you know,
Yeah.
but it's cool to see God doing stuff with it.
Well, I love that. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to share how people can get involved with that if they want to learn more and maybe even, lead their church in something like that or get involved individually. But I'll tell this quick story, Mike. I know I shared this with you when we talked a few weeks ago, but just for our audience, and I don't say this with a critical spirit, but I share this story to point out just a shift in two different perspectives. Years ago, Mike, I heard at a conference somewhere, maybe it was a network that our church was involved in, probably is where I heard this idea, this concept of doing a virtual missions trip. And but it's very different than what you just described. What they were encouraging churches to do was basically to get up and say, hey, how many of you would be interested in going on a 2-hour missions trip this Thursday night or whatever? And of course, people are leaning in like, well, how do you do that? Well, it's going to be a virtual missions trip. Okay, tell me more. And what it is you invite people to come to the church facility, feed them pizza, whatever, but then everyone bring your computers. And then what we're doing is we're going to essentially feed you digital marketing for the church. Like here, we want everybody to change your Facebook profile picture to this logo of our upcoming series. And we want everyone to put your, whatever they call that banner image, and for all your socials. And here's, we're going to give you a bunch of social media posts that you can use over the next 2 weeks as we kick off this thing. And I'm not being critical of that. I'm not saying that that's a bad idea to market a new thing or something the church is wanting to do to get the word out. But the point that I wanted to draw out of that is, once again, you see the focus. The focus is, this is ministry. It's promoting our church. It's promoting what's happening right here, instead of what I love about your marketplace, virtual missions trip, is you're really helping people see this is where the mission field is at. It's the place you get up and go to every day, whatever that is for you, your job, your school. Ministry is not just sanctioned to what happens inside of our church or a part of our church. So when you said marketplace missions trip initially in our conversation, I was like, oh, I've already heard this. And then what you described is very different than what I had been told about. So I just wanted to share that story because it kind of highlights the difference between those two perspectives.
Yeah, I'm just blessed at how God has done different things. We actually started out, our first attempt was reading a book called God Space by Doug Pollock, which is a really great resource. The subtitle is Where Spiritual Conversations Happen Naturally. But I didn't want to create any cost. We talk to people. The first prayer that we talk about is Isaiah's prayer from Isaiah 6. Here I am, send me. And we talk about how everything after that is Jesus's problem. If I start every day with here I am, send me, I'm on a mission trip. And, Jesus starts scheduling my activities. He starts making things happen. Yes, there are other things that we can be aware of. We can be ready to talk to people. The know what you believe step in our process is practicing a 2-sentence answer for the question, why are you doing this? Because we want to live in such a way that other people go, why are you doing this? And then we can say, well, I'm doing this because I'm a Jesus follower. And I felt like ever since I started following Jesus, my life's different. That's all you have to do. And now your faith becomes somebody else's challenge. They're trying to reconcile that in their brain. And so know what
So
you believe is practicing that, and speaking for yourself is making sure that when you say it, you use I and me statements. I'm sorry, Les, go ahead.
no, it's good. So build a bridge for us then between that personal commitment of yours to follower of one, and what was the catalyst for that, and how did that start?
So I had accidentally created a leadership community in much of my job transitions. I accidentally created a leadership community in 2009. And for people who don't remember all the details, the market went south and a lot of banks were having trouble, and
Mhm.
Twitter was brand new. And before I knew it, I had created a leadership community on LinkedIn, a group on LinkedIn that had over 1,000 members in it.
Okay.
And we were talking primarily about leadership, more from like a John Maxwell perspective,
Hmm.
genuine, authentic leadership. But I realized that I met a bunch of Christians from all over that world that were trying to be more intentional with their faith. And, I never did make any money, or that business whole effort of me being a leadership coach didn't work out. And so I gave all that away in 2014. But I kept thinking that the Christians needed something. And in one of our conversations, we had a discussion about how a leader was someone who has followers. And I made the statement on that call that I never followed anybody. I didn't want to have to become something I didn't want to be. I felt like a leader doesn't have to stop being a leader to make someone else a leader. And I even felt like I kind of won that argument. But after I got off that call, the Holy Spirit said, there is this one guy you follow, or your life doesn't work. And that's where I got the idea for Follower of One, and kept thinking about how wouldn't it be great if a bunch of people who had similar occupations could connect and help each other?
Mhm.
There may not be any other truck drivers in your church, but if you're a truck driver and you know a couple of other truck drivers and you guys connect on Follower of One, you can help each other out with what it's like to be a Christian truck driver or engineer or
Yep.
computer programmer. And
Yep.
I searched, I attended some Faith at Work conferences and couldn't find anything like this. So I started it.
I love it. What's your vision for Follower of One? If, we talk 2-3 years from now and everything's just firing on all 10 cylinders, tell me what's going on. What's your dream?
My dream is that we get really good at helping churches do this. The local church is God's answer. I don't want to actually create an organization that replaces that. We want to help churches partner with us and do this mission trip once or twice a year to get every member of their congregation on the mission field. I would say 3 to 5 years from now, I hope we have over 500 churches doing this mission trip every year. Put it on your calendar, just like you go to Mexico or wherever you go, but put this in your schedule too. There's a bunch of churches here in the Tulsa area. There are 3 that will be doing it right around Labor Day. They do it 2 weeks after Labor Day, and the sermon on Labor Day weekend is about your job is your mission field. And then, hey, let's go do that for 2 weeks. And they do a marketplace mission trip. And our next mission trip does start September the 15th too. So we do our 6 mission trips a year to help other people check it out. And then if they want to do it as their own church, do it in a group, then that's what we want to help them do.
Love it. That's so good. So if someone wanted to get connected and learn more and get their church involved or whatever, what's the call to action? Where would you have them go to connect with you and the marketplace mission trips concept?
Yeah, you can go to followerofone.org. There's a menu option to take action. We also have the website marketplacemissiontrip.com. There's a section on there for pastors. We even have a brochure on there that you can download and see what it looks like and things like that. Or you can just go Mike at followerofone.org. And then on every social media platform, except for the newer ones, I am Mike Henry SR.
I
So
see
on
a
Twitter.
podcast out there, Mike. Are you still doing that?
Well, so I haven't stopped. I've stopped recording new ones lately just because we've been too busy with a couple of other things, but I intend to get back to it. Our goal is that churches won't just do this once a year and then be gone for 11 months, but that their people can be plugged into Follower of One year round, continue to get help with integrating their faith at work. And so I plan to bring it back. There are about 800 5-minute devotionals on there,
Okay. Wow.
and about 100 interviews. The 5-minute devotional idea is where I'm going long-term, because I want to just help people remember as they're going into work. Okay, now I start praying for people. I'm getting on the mission field here in a minute. Let me get to work.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if a book is on your radar anywhere, but if it is, that's a great Follower of One is a pretty good title for a book. And there's not one out there that I see just with a quick search that's named that.
Well, thank you. We actually also do the mission trip in a 6-week format with small groups that is in a workbook. But yes, I haven't
Okay.
written a book about this whole story yet.
Yeah. Follower of One's a good title. So
Well, thank you.
just FYI.
Mike, I know a guy that could help you with that. His name is Les, and he runs our EntrePastors press that we have. So if you ever are serious about writing a book, let us know. We'll help you get it out there.
Cool. I'm happy to do that, Les. There always seems to be so many things to do.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
But
Yeah.
right now we have 8 churches, 7 churches, and one more I'm still waiting to hear from. But 8 churches I think will be partnering with us this year, and hopefully we will continue to double that every year till we get to 1,000 churches.
Nice.
Love it.
And then
Love it.
and then I'm out of here.
I love it. Hey, Mike, let me ask you this. If I'll give you kind of the final shot here,
Certainly.
if you could just sign off with a word of encouragement to pastors that are listening to this right now, take it any direction you want, but what would you say to give a voice of encouragement or a kick in the pants or whatever pastors need today?
So yeah, I'm grateful for you guys and girls. I'm excited about what God's doing in the world. I see him mobilizing so many more of us. Most of what we see today wouldn't be possible without things like the internet and smartphones. And what it's doing is it's raising the bar for every member in our congregation. We can't any longer just sit in the pews, nor will we. And so I'm excited to see how God is moving in all of this. And I'm grateful for what pastors are doing, because you've helped us get to this point. And he's going to make ministers out of many more people, and we get to watch. To me, that's cool. And so I'm excited. I'm grateful for you. Take a deep breath. Jesus is in charge. And, how we do all this stuff is his problem, not ours.
Man, good stuff. Mike, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you, man. Thanks for coming on the show and adding value to our community. We're grateful for you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thanks
Mike.
for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is an honor.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.